We're going to Florida, but not for beaches. We're going under the skin of the state to places where the past is still measurable. 5 sites, 1 state. Hard evidence, not legends. Bones with dates, circles and stone, mounds you can climb, a sinkhole that kept its receipts. If you've ever wanted proof that Florida remembers, you're going to see it. Remember to subscribe and give this video a like. And we're setting off on a journey through history. Windover, Titusville. Night frogs rasp over a small, black pond outside Titusville, Florida. In 1982, a backhoe cutting a drainage trench hit bone. Not one skeleton, an entire cemetery. Archaeologists moved in, opened the peat, and ultimately counted 168 individuals. Infants wrapped like parcels, teenagers, adults in their prime, elders with worn joints. This wasn't a disaster pit. It was a carefully planned burial ground used again and again. The preservation is the headline. Peat equals low oxygen plus acidic tannins, which slows decay to a crawl. Bodies were set on their sides in shallow water, often pinned with sharpened wooden stakes so they wouldn't float, and frequently wrapped in woven fabric. When excavators peeled back the peat, they didn't just find bone. They found textiles, cordage, wooden artifacts, plant fibers, even fragments of soft tissue inside skulls. For North America, that level of survival is almost unheard of. The dates lock it in deep time. Radiocarbon results cluster around 7,000 to 8,000 years ago, the early Archaic. That puts Windover long before pottery, corn, or villages. Yet the record is intimate. In several crania, brain tissue persisted, allowing microscopic study of disease and development. Pollen grains and seeds from the burials tell on the seasons. People were interred at different times of year, some with traces of last meals or medicinal plants. This isn't myth. It's data. Grave treatment is consistent and deliberate. Most individuals lie curled on their sides, heads to the west or northwest, facing roughly the same direction. Wooden stakes, driven at chest and pelvis, held them in place as the pond slowly sealed them in. Personal items survive because the pond protected organics. Bone and antler tools, shell beads, worked wood. Textiles show complex weaving rather than crude wrapping. Cordage diameters vary like you'd see in a well-practiced craft tradition. Biology reads like a community profile. You see healed fractures, arthritic vertebrae, dental wear consistent with a gritty diet and tool use. Tooth enamel defects flag childhood stress. Infant and child burials, tenderly prepared, sometimes with fabrics, show that loss was common and ritualized. Adult lifespans cluster in the 30s and 40s, with a few elders pushing beyond. Nothing here suggests aliens, giants, or lost continents. Everything here points to people who knew their landscape and each other. Context matters. Florida's karst and wetlands are full of sinkholes and ponds, but Windover is a standout because of scale and control. A large cemetery, repeatedly used, in a single pond, with organic preservation across the board. Excavation methods were correspondingly disciplined. Water screening, block lifting, detailed mapping of stake positions, and lab conservation for fragile wood and textiles. The site later earned National Historic Landmark status, federal recognition that this isn't just a local curiosity, but a reference site for the continent. What does it change? For one, it humanizes the archaic. The stereotype of nomadic foragers evaporates when you're staring at woven cloth, deliberate mortuary architecture, and community-level care. For another, it upgrades the scientific toolbox. Soft tissue means histology and biochemistry. Preserved plant remains mean dietary reconstruction. Fibers and textiles mean technology timelines you can actually hold up to a microscope. Every category here, health, craft, ritual, moves from inference to evidence. Stand by that pond at night, and the scene is plain enough to picture. A quiet water margin, torches, or firelight. A body positioned just so, wrapped and secured against the slow lift of decay gases. Stakes driven, peat pressed back, ripples settling to black. No temples, no monuments. A working ritual that leaves almost nothing to see and nearly everything to study if you're patient. Windover isn't a ghost story. It's the best preserved early archaic cemetery in the Americas, a place where chemistry, craft, and care converge to freeze a community in time. The frogs still rasp across the surface. the peat still holds its secrets. And the record they left, measured, mapped, and peer-reviewed, still argues for a simple, powerful idea. Water remembers. And here it remembered almost everything. Here's what we can say for certain. In 1982, a backhoe cutting a drainage trench in the Windover Farms development near Titusville brought up human bone. Work stopped. Archaeologists Glenn H. Doran and David N. Brickell from Florida State University took control of the site. To excavate a cemetery that was literally underwater, crews ringed the pond with roughly 160 dewatering wells, dropped the water table, laid out a grid, and hand-excavated mapped blocks. About half the pond was left untouched for future research. The count is stark. A minimum of 168 individuals, infants, children, teens, adults, and elders. Most were placed on their sides in a flexed position, heads commonly oriented west or northwest. Many were held down with sharpened wooden stakes driven at the chest and pelvis, a practical solution to keep wrapped bodies from floating in shallow water. This was not a mass disaster. It was a repeatedly used cemetery. Preservation is exceptional because peat changes the rules. In low oxygen with tannins, decay slows. At Windover, that chemistry saved organics almost never seen together at a single North American site. Excavators lifted textiles, at least 86 fabric pieces from 37 burials, representing 7 different weave types, along with cordage, wooden artifacts, and worked bone and antler. In dozens of crania, soft tissue survived, including recognizable brain tissue, that opened doors to imaging, histology, and even ancient DNA from soft tissue rather than just bone. Radiocarbon dates anchor the story, roughly 7,000 to 8,000 years ago, the early Archaic. Long before pottery and agriculture in Florida, this community managed a consistent mortuary program at the same water body across multiple episodes. The pattern suggests a place people returned to over centuries. Artifacts fill in daily life. There are projectile points and atlatl components for hunting, wooden tools for work, and textiles that were more than simple wrappings, evidence of practiced fiber technology. One celebrated find is a very early bottle gourd, pushing container used deep into the Archaic. Plant remains, pollen, seeds, fragments trapped in gut contents, trace diet breadth, and even seasonality for some interments. Biology reads like a community profile. You see healed fractures and osteoarthritis in adults who worked hard, osteoporosis in some older females, and heavy dental wear with relatively few cavities, consistent with a gritty, non-agricultural diet. Tooth enamel defects mark childhood stress. A teenage male with spina bifida lived long enough to show clear skeletal changes, strong evidence that people with serious conditions receive prolonged care in a mobile foraging society. Children and teens are often accompanied by more grave goods than adults, a pattern that says something about value, status, or grief in this community. Zoom out, and Windover sits within Florida's small but important tradition of peat and water burials. Little Salt Spring, Bay West, Republic Grove, Minnesota Key offshore. Windover stands apart because of scale, control, and the sheer volume of preserved organics. Field methods matched that significance. Water screening, block lifting, precise stake mapping, immediate conservation for fragile woods and fibers. The result is a dataset that moves arguments about archaic lifeways from speculation to measurement. Recognition followed. On May 28, 1987, the United States designated Windover a National Historic Landmark with an accompanying National Register listing. That status isn't a trophy. It's a promise, curation, access for qualified researchers, and federal acknowledgement that this pond cemetery is a reference point for American archaeology. Bottom line, Windover is a controlled, well-dated early archaic cemetery where organics survived on a scale almost unknown. Textiles, wood, plant remains, and in approximately 90 skulls, soft tissue, including brain. One pond, used deliberately over centuries, recorded how people in prehistoric Florida hunted, wove, healed, mourned, and remembered. No legends needed. The evidence is in the peat. Here's why Windover isn't just another mystery site. It's a baseline. Most prehistoric cemeteries in North America preserve bone and stone. Windover preserves organics, textiles, wood, plant remains, and in many cases soft tissue, so we can test ideas with lab work instead of guesswork. That single difference changes everything we can say about early archaic life in Florida. Start with health and care. Healed fractures, arthritic joints, enamel defects, and a teenage male with spina bifida who lived long enough to show extensive skeletal change. Evidence that people with serious conditions were supported over years. That pushes back against the stereotype of survival only. It shows sustained caregiving in a mobile foraging society. Move to technology. Textiles at Windover aren't token scraps. They're a data set. Dozens of pieces, multiple weave types, cords of different diameters. That tells you there was a practiced fiber industry. Spinning, weaving, and probably routine maintenance of bags, mats, and clothing. Combine that with Aucilla components and worked wood, and you're looking at a toolkit broader than stone points suggest. Then food and seasonality. Pollen, seeds, and occasional gut contents tie burials to specific times of year and to plants actually handled and eaten: elderberry, grape, prickly pear, and others. That lets researchers reconstruct seasonal scheduling, when people harvested and moved, not just where they camped. Mortuary behavior is equally concrete. Repeated use of the same pond over centuries, flexed burials, consistent head orientation, and stake pin placement point to a stable ritual program rather than emergency disposal. Children and teens often have more grave goods than adults, a pattern that says something about value and status that skeletal counts alone would miss. Scientifically, Windover opens methods that most North American sites can't. Histology on preserved tissue. Ancient DNA extracted from soft tissue, not just bone. Radiocarbon dating on multiple materials that converge on 7,000,8,000 years ago. When you add the field controls, mapped grids, recorded stake positions, water screen sediments, you get a replicable record, not anecdotes. Regionally, Windover anchors Florida's rare bog/water burial tradition, alongside Little Salt Spring, Bay West, Republic Grove, Minnesota Key offshore. Among those, Windover stands out for sample size and across-the-board preservation, which is why researchers keep using it as a reference dataset for archaic lifeways in the Southeast. It also matters for public history. Windover earned National Historic Landmark status because it changes the narrative ordinary visitors hear. Before pottery, before villages, people here were already weaving, planning, caring, and remembering. No giants, no lost continents, just a community whose choices survived because chemistry was on their side. If you want to verify everything you've just heard, you don't need to chase rumor. National Park Service, NPS, NHL listing. Look up the Windover Archaeological Site in the National Historic Landmarks and National Register databases. You'll see the official designation, May 28, 1987, and significant statement, with site numbers and references. Peer-reviewed research. Start with the Florida State University team's publications, Glenn H. Doran, David N. Brickell and colleagues, and the edited volume, Windover, Multidisciplinary Investigations of an Early Archaic Florida Cemetery. These cover excavation methods, including dewatering wells, burial counts, textiles, soft tissue, and dating. Medical/biological studies. Articles on soft tissue preservation, brain tissue identification, and paleopathology at Windover are indexed in scholarly databases, PubMed/Google Scholar. They provide the numbers, how many crania with tissue, what tests were run, what pathologies were documented. State Heritage Resources. The Florida Division of Historical Resources summarizes the site in public briefs and bibliographies, pointing to reports, site files, and conservation notes. Museums and local overviews. County and regional museums in Brevard present exhibits and teacher guides on Windover and Florida's archaic period, with artifact photos and plain language timelines that match the academic record. Windover's value is that it collapses distance. You're not speculating about what life might have been like. You're looking at woven cloth, stake patterns, plant seeds, and sometimes brain tissue that let you measure how people lived, cared, and mourned 7,000 to 8,000 years ago. That's why this small pond outside Titusville sits in the Federal Register and in archaeology textbooks. And that's why, when we talk about the earliest Floridians tonight, we don't have to lean on myth. We can point to the peat and say, here is the evidence, and here is where you can read it for yourself. Next, we head to Page-Ladson. Into the tea-colored Aucilla River we go, down to a sinkhole where divers found stone tools beside mastodon bone, including a tusk with clean-cut marks, and build a stack of 71 radiocarbon dates around 550 years ago. It's the Southeast's clearest pre-Clovis footprint. Hard proof people were here 1,000 years earlier than the old story said. I drop into the Aucilla River, and the world turns the color of tea. Visibility shrinks to a few feet. A taut guideline leads me over a mid-channel sinkhole where the current tugs at my tank and the silt never quite settles. Below the drifting leaf litter, the riverbed stops being sand and becomes pages, stacked, compacted, readable if you know how to take them apart. We've grid the hole in 1-meter squares and hung tags on every line. This is Page-Ladson, Site 8JE591, an underwater remnant of a late Pleistocene pond capped by roughly 4 meters of mud. We don't poke around. We log provenience like a clean room. Depth to the centimeter, unit and subunit, compass bearings, notes on texture and color. Each scoop goes up the airlift hose, through a floating screen, and into labeled bags that head straight to the surface. The layer we came for sits deep, where stone meets bone. I fan a palm across coffee-brown sediment, and a flake flashes back, fresh conchoidal edge, not river-rounded. A biface fragment follows, thin and careful, still sharp enough to bite a glove. A half-meter away, mastodon lies quiet in the dark, rib, vertebra, and a tusk that carries parallel V-shaped grooves. They're not root scars. They're cut marks, consistent spacing, crisp shoulders, the kind of geometry stone leaves when it carves flesh. What matters isn't a single artifact or a lucky bone. It's association, tools, and megafauna locked in the same undisturbed stratum. Topside, the lab clock's time. We don't hang this story on one carbon date. We build a staircase of them. Charcoal, bone collagen where it survives, plant bits hardened into the layer, 71 radiocarbon ages spread through the profile. Calibrated, the signal tightens. Human activity on this surface about 14,550 calendar years ago. That's at least 1,000 years before classic Clovis shows up across the continent. Not an outlier, not a rumor. A buried occupation sealed, then reopened centimeter by centimeter. The river adds another instrument. Spores of Sporomiella, a dung fungus that tracks large herbivores. In this same sequence, those spores plunge around 12,600 years ago, mirroring a regional fall-off in megafauna. The implication is simple and heavy. People and mastodons overlapped here for roughly 2,000 years before the big animals disappear from the local record. All of it is staged by Florida karst, an aquifer-fed river-cutting Oligocene limestone. Channels that switch from surface runs to subterranean conduits, sinkholes that trap and protect old pond floors. The same geology that preserved the site makes the work hard. You measure in near-zero visibility with current on your shoulders, you tether every find to a grid, and you accept that underwater archaeology is slow because it has to be. Every bag carries a tiny biography. Unit, depth, coordinates, who collected it, and when. By the end of a day, the shot list writes itself. Tannic water swallowing the beam. A slate that reads Unit 3. A close-up of the cut-marked tusk before it moves a millimeter. The dredge whispering gravel upward. Then the counter in the lab. Sample racks lined with charcoal flecks and bone scraps ready for AMS. When the printer spits out the numbers, you can feel the river get older in your hands. 71 dates, 14,550 calories BP, Aucilla River, Florida. That's the opening. No campfire flourish, no mystery box. Divers descend through a living river to a still Pleistocene floor, pull stone next to mastodon, and defend the association with clean stratigraphy and dozens of dates. The headline isn't a monster or a myth. It's a map update. The Southeast belongs on the pre-Clovis timeline, and Page-Ladson shows exactly how we know. Here's the plain English version of what the team proved. The site is on the floor of the Aucilla River in North Florida, inside a natural hole in the riverbed. Think of it as a deep pocket where ancient mud piled up and sealed whatever was on the bottom. Today, it's about 30 feet of water above that old surface. Divers work there because the good stuff is buried under several feet of silt. They didn't guess. They mapped the spot into squares, worked slowly, and wrote down exactly where every find came from. Bags went up to the surface with labels, which square, how deep, and what it was. The goal was simple: show that people and mastodons were on the same ground at the same time. And they were. In one buried layer, divers pulled stone tools, sharp flakes, and a thin broken knife-like piece, right next to mastodon bones. Those tools are made from local chert, a flint-like rock, so they're not random river junk. Even better, one mastodon tusk from that same layer has clean, V-shaped cut marks in a pattern you get when a sharp stone blade slices fresh tissue. Roots don't make marks like that. Ice and gravel don't either. People do. Dating is the part that shuts down the maybe it washed in later argument. The team didn't hang everything on one date. They ran dozens, 71 radiocarbon dates, from bits of charcoal, bone, and other material above, inside, and below the layer with the tools and bones. All those clocks point to the same answer. About 14,550 years ago for the human activity on that buried surface. That's at least 1,000 years before the famous Clovis culture shows up across North America. In other words, Page-Ladson isn't a rumor of pre-Clovis. It's a measured one. There's also a natural lid on the story. Above the artifact layer sits a distinct band of shell-rich sediment that settled there shortly after, and then more mud on top. That lid and the stacked dates tell you the layer stayed put. It wasn't churned up by floods or animals. The tools and bones are still where they fell. Now add the big animal signal. Scientists counted spores of a fungus called Aucilla. It grows in the dung of large plant eaters. When lots of big animals are around, you see lots of those spores in the mud. In the Page-Ladson cores, the spore counts collapse around 12,600 years ago. That lines up with the regional decline of mammoths, mastodons, and other megafauna. Put the two timelines together and you get a clear picture. People and mastodons overlapped here for roughly 2,000 years before the big animals disappear from the local record. A few numbers worth remembering. Where? Aucilla River, Florida, on a deep hole in the riverbed. How deep? About 30 feet of water over the old surface. What's together? Stone tools plus mastodon bones in the same undisturbed layer. Proof of butchery. Cut marks on a mastodon tusk made by a sharp stone blade. How we know the age? 71 radiocarbon dates stacked through the mud. Result 14,550 years ago. Why the layer is trustworthy? A natural shell lid above it and no signs of mixing. What happened next? Big animal dung spore counts crashed 12,600 years ago. People and megafauna coexisted here 42,000 years. That's the backbone. Careful diving. A clean layer where tools and bones sit together, a mountain of dates that agree on the time, and an independent signal that tracks when the big animals fade out. No chase scenes, no legends, just a Florida river that kept an ancient pond floor intact long enough for us to read it. Here's why this river hole in Florida changed the map. For years, the Tidy story said the first Americans were the Clovis people, around 13,000 years ago, spreading fast with distinctive spear points. Page-Ladson forces the southeast onto the timeline earlier, by at least 1,000 years. And it does it with the kind of evidence that survives peer review. Same layer, stone tools beside mastodon bone, a mastodon tusk with crisp, V-shaped cut marks, and a stack of 71 radiocarbon dates bracketing the activity at 14,550 calendar years ago. That's not a rumor or an outlier. That's a documented occupation sealed under meters of mud and audited in a major journal. Why that's big? It proves people were established on the Gulf coastal plain before Clovis technology appears. If humans are here by 14,600 years ago, then routes into the continent weren't limited to a single inland, ice-free corridor. Coastal and riverine pathways through the southeast become part of the story, and Florida's karst rivers, reliable watering holes during dry late Pleistocene swings, make archaeological sense as early hubs. The Page-Ladson layer preserves exactly that kind of place. A pond margin where people processed a mastodon and left tools in the mud that hardened over them. It also ties humans to the last chapter of megafauna in this region without hand-waving. In the same sediment sequence that holds the tools and tusk, scientists tracked spores of Aucilla, a dung fungus that rises and falls with big herbivores. Those counts collapse around 12,600 years ago, matching wider evidence that mammoths and mastodons were fading out. Read together. The layers say people and mastodons coexisted here for roughly 2 millennia, long enough for repeated encounters, not a single lucky find. Just as important is how the claim is built. Underwater work at Page-Ladson isn't metal detecting, it's controlled excavation. Divers mapped a grid floor, logged depth and coordinates for every item, and published a full radiocarbon series through the river mud above, within, and below the artifact horizon. A distinctive shell-rich bed caps the tool layers shortly after the event, acting like a natural lid. That stratigraphy is why critics can't shrug and say it washed in later. The artifacts didn't travel, the river rose over them. Methodologically, the site set a bar for replicability in pre-Clovis claims. The paper lays out the artifacts, the faunal identifications, the tusk mark measurements, the dating strategy, and the sedimentology in ways other teams can interrogate. It's not dependent on one spectacular object or a single lab result. It's multiple lines of evidence converging in one undisturbed layer. That's why Page-Ladson keeps showing up in textbooks and conference talks when people debate how and when the Americas were settled. Bottom line, Page-Ladson takes the Southeast out of the footnotes and puts it on the front page of the peopling of the Americas story. It's pre-Clovis, it's underwater but rock solid, and it's fully citable, from tusk grooves to calibrated dates. If you're going to argue with it, you have to argue with the data, because the river kept the receipts and the journal printed them. Next, we head to the Miami Circle at Brickell Point. Beneath the lawn in the heart of Miami is a near-perfect 11.5 ring with 24 carved basins and hundreds of post sockets, discovered in 1998. It's the floor plan of a large wooden structure of the Tequesta people, locked into the limestone, a federally protected site right at the river's mouth. Miami at night is all glass and river light, condo crowns, bridge traffic, the tide pushing brackish water up the Miami River. But at Brickell Point, under a quiet patch of lawn at the foot of the towers, the city sits on a ring cut straight into the bedrock. They call it the Miami Circle. It isn't a ruin you can walk through. It's not stacked stones or a mound. It's a perfect circle about 38 feet across, carved into the oolitic limestone that underlies downtown. Inside the ring are 24 distinct basins, cup-like cuts, and hundreds of smaller holes and slots that once held posts. Think blueprint, not monument. A floor plan chiseled into the rock so a large wooden structure could be locked into place and never drift in flood or storm. We found it by accident. In 1998, during site prep for a new high-rise, survey archaeologists pulled back a layer of fill and saw geometry where there should have been nothing. Arcs of cut limestone, holes in organized rows, shell tools and bone lying in the seams. The discovery froze construction and drew a perimeter of lights, cameras, and court orders. Within months, a public fight saved the footprint. The state of Florida bought the land to keep the ring where it was made. The river tells you why it's here. At the mouth of the Miami River, fresh and salt water mix. Fish ride the tide. Sea grass beds and mangroves used to stand in thick. On this point, long before hotels and rail lines, sat a Tequesta settlement, one of the principal towns in South Florida when Europeans first arrived. The circle reads like its anchor, a council house, a chief's house, or a ritual space built big, rebuilt often, and fixed to the stone because wood rots and storms come. But limestone keeps a memory. The details make it real. The limestone isn't weathered at random. The cuts are tool smooth, with straight walls and flat bottoms where they needed them, and rounded sockets where posts were meant to sit. The artifacts match the river: shell gouges and celts, bone points, shark and ray remains, charcoal lenses from controlled fires. A few items, exotic stone carried from inland quarries, say trade routes reached beyond Biscayne Bay. Radiocarbon dates cluster in the last 2 millennia, with a strong signal in the first millennium AD. Deeply pre-city, fully human. Stand there after dark and the skyline does weird work. Above you, cranes, aviation lights, the metro rail sliding over the channel. Beneath, a ring that held posts taller than a person, spaced so a heavy roof could be tied down, open at the sides to pull river air through. You can map the interior in your head, central hearths blackening the rock, benches on a packed floor, racks for drying fish and shellfish, a doorway aimed to catch breeze or sunrise. When the tide turned, the water slapped the bank the same way it does tonight. It isn't Stonehenge, and it isn't a myth. It's a cut plan, a decision to make architecture permanent in a place where everything else was temporary. When the builders needed to move posts, they cut new sockets. When they rebuilt, they followed the same circle. When they left, the pattern stayed. That's what you see in the lawn at Brickell Point. Not an outline we drew, but one they carved and used again and again until the river and the rising city covered it. So the open lands like this, downtown glitter, river noise, and under a thin cover of grass, a 38-foot limestone ring with 24 carved basins that locked a wooden building to the ground at the heart of a Tequesta town. Found in 1998, preserved in place, hidden again to protect it. And now the starting point for a story where Miami's oldest architecture is a negative space in stone, older than the skyline, as exact as a compass, and still exactly where its makers left it. Walk with me to the river's edge at Brickell Point. Under this patch of grass, where joggers pass and the tide noses the seawall, there's a building plan carved straight into the bedrock. Not a wall left standing, not a mound, just the negative of a structure, fixed forever in stone. Picture a ring, almost perfect, about 38 feet across. The floor is Miami's natural oolitic limestone, and someone long before the skyline took tools to it. Along the ring, they cut 24 broad, cup-shaped basins, and between them, they punched hundreds of smaller sockets. Into those sockets went posts, thick, vertical timbers that once held up a serious roof. It's less a ruin than a blueprint you can walk. We didn't know it was here until 1998. A developer was getting ready to pour a high-rise foundation at 401 Brickell Avenue. The salvage archaeology crew scraped back the fill and expected random bedrock. Instead, they saw arcs, clean cuts where nature doesn't make them, curves matching curves, holes lining up in careful rows. Work stopped. Cameras arrived. And then Miami did something rare for a boomtown. It hit pause. Lawsuits and late-night meetings turned into a deal. The state of Florida bought the land so the circle could stay where its makers put it. So who made it? Stand here and face the river. Fresh water slides out from the Everglades. Salt pushes back from Biscayne Bay. Fish stack on the tide. Mangroves once laced this bank. This point, at the river's mouth, was a principal town of the Tequesta, the indigenous people Europeans first met in South Florida. The artifacts found in and around the cuts, shell gouges and celts, bone points, small flakes of imported chert, charcoal lenses, even shark and ray remains, fit that river life exactly. Dates on the charcoal cluster in the first millennium A.D., with use across the last 2,000 years. In plain terms, long before the city, this was already a center. Why carve a building into rock? Because wood rots and storms come. If you want a big structure to survive on a tidal riverbank, council house, chief's house, ceremonial hall, you lock the posts into stone. The 24 basins and the dense field of post holes read like engineering. Wide-seated supports around the ring, lighter interior posts to take rafters, openings placed to pull breeze and keep a fire smoke off the rafters. You can almost trace doorways and benches from the spacing. And why can't you see it now? Because stone remembers better when we let it rest. After the excavation and recording, the state reburied the cut plan in 2003 to protect it from weathering and floods. The park you're standing in is the lid. The circle is still exactly beneath your feet, preserved in place, just not exposed to be chewed by rain and salt. Recognition followed the data. The address, the layout, the artifacts, the dates. Together they made a case strong enough for Washington. The site went on the National Register of Historic Places in 2002 and was named a National Historic Landmark in 2009. That's the federal way of saying, this footprint matters to the whole country, not just the neighborhood. There are a few points people always ask about, so let's put them in one breath. Yes, the ring is 38 feet, almost equals 11.5 m in diameter. Yes, there are 24 carved basins plus hundreds of smaller cuts. Yes, it was found in 1998 during construction. Yes, it's attributed to the Tequesta from context, artifacts, and location. Yes, the state bought the parcel to save it. And yes, it was covered again to keep it safe. And yes, you can visit. The site is a public riverside park. Why do historians care so much about a pattern of holes? Because in the eastern United States, this is the only complete prehistoric structural footprint cut into bedrock. It anchors a major indigenous town to a precise spot on the modern map. It turns the oldest architecture in Miami into something you can measure: diameter, post spacing, entry orientation, even load paths. And it tells a clean story, no legend required, about a community that solved wind, water, and weather with a chisel and a plan. So the facts live here as plainly as the skyline. A stone circle, 24 basins, a discovery date you can put on a calendar, state purchase, federal listings, and a quiet lawn that hides a blueprint older than the city. The circle's job was to hold a building steady. Today, it holds the past steady, right where the river meets the bay. Here's why this footprint under downtown is a big deal. It's pre-Columbian architecture in the heart of a modern city. Not a replica, not a relocated exhibit, but an original structural plan cut into Miami's bedrock and left exactly where the builders made it. In the eastern United States, a complete cut-in-rock prehistoric building footprint of this size is essentially unheard of. Most coastal sites were wood on sand. Storms erased them. Here, the makers locked their posts into oolitic limestone, and that decision is why we can still read their plan today. The circle pins a real community to a precise place. It's 38 foot, almost equals 11.5 m, diameter, 24 carved basins, and dense field of post holes match a large, permanent wooden structure at the mouth of the Miami River, the center of a Tequesta town recorded at European contact. Artifacts in and around the cuts, shell tools, bone points, river fish and shark remains, and a few flakes of imported chert fit a river-facing economy. Charcoal dates concentrate in the first millennium A.D., with use across the last 2,000 years. That turns indigenous presence from a line on a map into a measurable floor plan, span, post spacing, load path, openings. It also shows that urban archaeology can win. Discovered during foundation work in 1998, the circle could have vanished in a week. Instead, construction paused. The state of Florida purchased the parcel, 1999. The feature was documented, and then reburied, 2003, to protect it from weather and tides. Today, it's a public park at 401 Brickell Avenue, a rare case where a boomtown kept its oldest architecture in place and built the city around it. Federal protection isn't just a plaque, it sets standards. The National Register of Historic Places, 2002, recognized the site's national significance. The National Historic Landmark, 2009, listing put it in the top tier of U.S. historic places. Those designations require stewardship, limit harmful alterations, and keep the record open to researchers. In practical terms, the geometry you're hearing about, 38 feet, 24 basins, hundreds of post sockets, isn't a rumor from a newspaper clipping. It's archived, mapped, and reviewed at the state and federal level. Why this matters for the story you're telling? It anchors a named indigenous nation, Tequesta, to the exact footprint beneath modern Miami. It captures engineering choices, posts seated in limestone to resist floods and hurricanes, that explain how big riverfront buildings could stand for generations. It provides a clean, verifiable case study for teaching, urban growth versus heritage, in-place preservation versus removal, and how archaeology works when time, money, and politics collide. It gives your audience something they can physically visit, a park over the original feature, with the skyline as context for the time depth underfoot. That's why the Miami Circle matters. It's a federally protected, urban, pre-Columbian structure you can plot with a tape and a compass. A blueprint in stone that lets Miami's oldest buildings speak from beneath the newest ones. Next, we head to Crystal River Archaeological State Park. On Florida's Gulf Coast, a 6-mound ceremonial center, 2 platform mounds, a plaza, burial mounds, and a sweeping shell midden, used for nearly 1,900 years. Climb the 30-foot Temple Mound and you're standing on a U.S. National Historic Landmark. Dawn comes in gray over the marsh. Fog lifts off the Crystal River, and the first thing you feel is height. You're climbing a shell and sand platform on the Gulf Coast, stairs biting upward to a flat summit that once stood about 30 feet high, roughly 182 feet long and 100 feet wide. with an 80-foot ramp pulling you to the top. Today, there's a 55-step observation deck. The view is the same one people used here for ceremonies and speeches for centuries. Spread below is a 6-mound ceremonial complex, platform, temple, mounds, burial mounds, a plaza, and a long, crescent midden made from generations of meals and craft debris. This wasn't a lone village. It was a regional center where people traveled to trade, bury their dead, and renew ties. Occupation stretched well over 1,600 to 1,900 years, making it one of Florida's longest-used sites. Walk the loop and the details harden. The plaza sits between raised ground and water, processional space framed by the big platform. The burial complex holds layers of interments from deep prehistory into the first millennium AD, a record of changing rites. Rich grave goods early on, fewer later, all of it stacked in shell and sand. The river is the logic, tidal, brackish, open to the Gulf, perfect for canoe traffic and long-distance exchange. Then there's the stone you don't expect on Florida's west coast, limestone stele. In the 1960s, archaeologists documented large upright slabs near the burial area, rare for the southeast. One with a carved human figure faint in the face of time. Whether you read them as markers, status signs, or sky watchers, they're local rocks set up to mean something in public view. Crystal River is protected ground now, a Florida state park with signage and a museum, but it carries federal weight too. Under the title Crystal River Indian Mounds, the site is a U.S. National Historic Landmark, a formal way of saying this place matters beyond the county line. So the morning scene isn't just mood. It's the architecture of a coastal capital, a ramped platform facing water, a plaza for gathering, burial mounds holding generations, a midden that reads like a ledger, and a few standing stones you don't forget once you've seen them. From the top, the geometry clicks, paths, alignments, approach lines from river and marsh. When the fog thins and the birds rise off the flats, you're standing where thousands stood before you, on a man-made height built to be seen and built to last. Walk the boardwalk with me just after sunrise. The river is flat, the air smells a little like salt and shell, and ahead of us the stairs climb a man-made hill. This isn't landscaping. It's a platform mound built from shell and sand. The original measurements are practical and exact, roughly 30 feet high, about 182 feet long and 100 feet wide at the base, with an 80-foot ramp that once carried people up to a flat top. Today you'll count around 55 steps. At the summit you see why the mound is here. Clear sightlines over water, marsh, and plaza. From up here the site's layout snaps into place. Crystal River isn't a single pile. It's a 6-mound ceremonial complex. On opposite ends sit the two big platform, temple, mounds, the one we're on and its partner across the grounds. Between them lies a broad plaza, open space for gatherings and processions. To one side rises the burial mound group, layered with interments stacked through time. Arcing along the waterfront is the long midden, a ridge made from generations of oyster, clam, fish bone, broken tools, and daily debris. That curve of refuse is a ledger, what people ate, when festivals happened, which seasons drew the largest crowds. The timeline is long. People began using this place around 2,500 years ago and kept returning for nearly 1,900 years. They came by canoe along the Gulf Coast and through the marsh channels to trade, hold ceremonies, and bury their dead. The burial record shows change. Early periods with richer offerings, later ones with different rites, all within the same sacred footprint. Few Florida sites carry that kind of continuous use. It's why Crystal River is singled out as one of the state's longest occupied pre-Columbian centers. Back on the ground, details accumulate. The plaza isn't random open land. It's framed deliberately by water on one side and the ramped platform on the other, a designed stage for movement, arrival, procession, ascent. The opposing platform mounds work like bookends, anchoring public life at both ends of the complex. The midden tells quieter stories, seasonality in fish species, shifts in shell choice, tool offcuts that say who was making what on festival days. There's also something here you don't expect in this region, standing limestone stele near the burial area. One, recorded in the 1960s, carries a faint carved human figure. It's local stone set upright on purpose, unusual in the southeast, and it turns the burial ground into a more formal, visible place. Park notes often place that carved stele around the mid-1st millennium AD. Whatever the exact reading, it's a marker you remember. Crystal River isn't just scenery, it's protected history. The grounds operate as a Florida state park, about 61 acres with trails, signage, and a small museum. And the site holds the federal title of U.S. National Historic Landmark under the name Crystal River Indian Mounds. Those designations mean the measurements you've heard: 6 mounds, platforms, burials, plaza, midden, the 30-foot height, the 80-foot ramp, aren't tour guide tales. They're documented in state summaries, museum research, and federal files, and the place is managed so visitors can see the plan and researchers can keep testing it. So if someone asks what's here, you can answer without poetry. A planned ceremonial center on the Gulf Coast, used for nearly 2 millennia, built around 2 platform mounds, a burial complex, a plaza, and a waterside midden, with a rare carved stele standing guard. Climb the steps, look over the river, and you're standing on numbers as much as earth. Heights, lengths, dates, features that line up the same way on paper and on the ground. This place is a benchmark, not a backdrop. First, time depth you can stand on. Few sites in Florida show continuous ceremonial use for nearly 2 millennia. Crystal River does. The platform mounds, the plaza, the burial complex, and the waterfront midden record people returning to the same ground again and again, trading, feasting, burying their dead, renewing ties. When we talk about centers on the Gulf Coast, this is what the word means. Second, a complete ceremonial layout in one park. You don't get a stray burial or a lone mound. You get the whole plan. 2 platform, temple, mounds on axis, a central plaza, a cluster of burial mounds, and a long shell midden that reads like a running ledger of daily life. That completeness makes Crystal River a teaching site. Processions, vantage lines, and activity zones are visible on the ground, not guessed from a diagram. Third, rare stone markers in a region that rarely kept stone upright. The limestone stele by the burials, one with a faint carved human figure, are unusual for the southeast. They turn a shell and sand landscape into something more formal and public. When you discuss status, memory, or sky watching here, you're not speculating. You have physical markers to point to. Fourth, scale and engineering. The main platform's original size, about 30 feet high, roughly 182 by 100 feet at the base, approached by an 80-feet ramp, shows deliberate staging, elevate speakers, firelight, and ritual above the marsh. From the top you command views of river and plaza. The architecture explains the social function. Fifth, federal significance and active protection. This isn't just a nice park. Under the name Crystal River Indian Mounds, the site is a U.S. National Historic Landmark, the top federal recognition for historic places in the United States, and operates as a Florida state park. That pairing means documented boundaries, curated collections, controlled research access, and long-term stewardship. In short, the measurements you hear on the tour match what's in the files. Sixth, a hub in coastal networks. The midden shells and fish, the tool debris, and exotic materials trace exchange across the Gulf. Crystal River wasn't isolated. It was plugged into traffic routes that carried goods, ideas, and people along estuaries and barrier islands. When we teach how the coast worked, this is a clean case. Seventh, public archaeology that's actually public. Trails, an overlook, signage, and a small museum make the data legible. Feature labels match the research literature. The stair count and mound dimensions match the park's own technical notes. You can film it, list the numbers on screen, and viewers can walk the same ground and see the same plan. That's why Crystal River matters. It's a complete, federally recognized ceremonial center you can measure with a tape, film in one morning, and back up with state and federal records. No folklore required. Just stairs, shells, stone, and time. Next, we head to Devil's Den in Williston, a steaming karst sinkhole over a 72 degrees Fahrenheit spring. Beneath the skylight, a cavern where human remains lie with Ice Age fauna, including the extinct Florida spectacled bear. Winter air hangs over a hole in the ground outside Williston, Florida. Steam rolls up from it like breath. Locals call it Devil's Den, a karst sinkhole where the roof of a limestone cave collapsed and left a round skylight into an underground spring. You descend by stairs cut through Aucilla limestone to a wooden platform above the water. The spring holds a steady 72 degrees F, 22 degrees Celsius, year-round, so when cool air hits warm water you get that signature fog. Below the platform is a wide cavern room, not an open water lake, not a tight cave tunnel, but a dome with stone ledges and solution pockets around the walls. The maximum depth is about 55 feet, with clear water that turns blue under lights. It's a training favorite for divers, but this room was a trap for thousands of years, a natural pit where animals and objects slid or were carried in and then stayed. Drop in with a light, and the geometry clarifies. The skylight above throws a beam down the center. Around the perimeter, rock shelves step away into darker water. In those shelves and pockets, collectors and scientists in the 20th century found bone-bearing sediment. Not a few stray fragments, but concentrations. The setting did the preservation, a protected chamber buffered from waves and storms, where bones could settle, get buried, and avoid being scattered. This is why Devil's Den shows up in museum catalogs and scientific papers. The deposits here recorded a late Ice Age Florida. Dry seasons longer, coastlines farther out, springs like this one acting as magnets for wildlife. Over time, a portion of those remains slipped into the room we're in now. Alongside the animal bones, early investigations also documented human remains, evidence that people used or entered this place deep in the past. Later, as methods improved, researchers began asking the hard questions. Are the human and animal bones the same age? Did people and the last of Florida's big fauna overlap here? In some samples, there wasn't enough collagen left for traditional radiocarbon dating, so teams turned to geochemistry, reading the pattern of rare earth elements soaked into bone to test whether different species fossilized under the same water chemistry at the same time. But that's the lab story. The room itself is simple. The overhead environment means there's always a ceiling. Divers follow guidelines and stay within training limits. The water is calm. Visibility can be excellent. Look along the lower ledges and you grasp why this became a repository. Once bone and sediment lodged in these pockets, nothing short of a deliberate dig would move them again. That's why so much of Devil's Den's important material ended up in curation at the Florida Museum of Natural History, and why the site still features in discussions about people and Pleistocene fauna in Florida. For the opening scene, you don't need smoke machines. Winter does it for you. You frame the round skylight, the vapor, the stairs, the diver's lamp raking across a stone lip where the bone layer once sat thick. You hear the hiss of a second stage, see silt lift in slow curtains, watch a gloved hand hover over pebbled sediment that's older than the city of Williston by tens of thousands of years. Everything about this place is specific: private dive site, controlled access, constant spring temperature, collapsed roof skylight, cavern to 55 feet with tiers where deposits collect, a documented history of Ice Age fauna and ancient human remains recovered from the chamber, and a modern push to analyze what those finds really mean about timing. It's not a legend. It's a Florida karst window, a natural archive where the ceiling kept the pages from blowing away. So the hook writes itself. Steam at the opening. A blue room under limestone. A diver settling by the ledge where bone once pressed into clay. No ancient curse, no creature in the dark, just the quiet of a spring that turned into a time capsule, and the question we'll spend the episode answering. What, exactly, did Devil's Den keep, and when? Open the museum boxes and the labels tell you the first chapter. Devil's Den, 8LV84. Card after card lists bones pulled from the Williston sinkhole since the 1960s. Ice Age animals, and, crucially, human remains. The record isn't rumor, it's curation. The Florida Museum of Natural History formally lists at least 4 individuals from this site and more than 100 associated objects. That's the paper trail that says, people are part of this deposit and they've been in professional care for decades. Now drop back into the spring itself. The water holds at 72 degrees F, a blue cavern under a round skylight, ledges stepping down to 50 to 55 feet. Those shelves are pockets where time stalls. Bone settles there and stays unless someone moves it. That's why the den kept so much of late Pleistocene Florida, not scraps, but a faunal roster that includes vanished species. One of the stars is the Florida spectacled bear, Tremarctos floridanus. Several skeletons from this very sinkhole helped scientists describe the animal's build, solid proof the den's archive reaches into the Ice Age, not just recent centuries. The hard question has always been association. Did people and those big animals share this place? Or did the sinkhole mix different eras together? Classic radiocarbon hits a wall here. Many bones lack enough collagen to date cleanly. So in 2015, a team led by Barbara Purdy took a different path: rare earth element analysis. As bones fossilize, groundwater writes a chemical signature into them. If human bones and megafaunal bones show the same signature, they mineralized under the same water chemistry, which strongly suggests they lay here at the same time. In the den, the fingerprints matched. Human remains and extinct animal bones carry nearly identical rare earth patterns. That doesn't print a calendar year, but it does say, with lab-grade confidence, that the people in the last Ice Age fauna overlapped in this chamber near the end of the Pleistocene. One episode, not a coincidence of two eras washed into one whole. String the scenes together, and the story tightens. A private karst spring with controlled access, a constant temperature cavern that traps bone, a museum inventory that explicitly names human remains from 8LV84, a faunal list anchored by extinct species, and a peer-reviewed geochemical result that ties humans to those animals in the same depositional window. Each piece answers a different worry. Are the people real? Yes, cataloged. Is the fauna really Ice Age? Yes, documented species like Tremarctos floridanus. Did they live at the same time? The RE match says they did. There are limits you should hear, too. The chemical test is relative, not absolute. No single number pops out like 12,800 years. And a sinkhole is a complicated space. Ledges, pockets, and microlayers can vary. But when you add custody records, species lists, and chemistry, Devil's Den stops being a dive site legend and becomes a coherent late Pleistocene scene with people in it. So the narrative you bring to camera can be simple and solid. In a warm spring under a limestone skylight, Florida kept a chapter of the Ice Age. Humans are in that chapter, filed and numbered in a museum. Extinct animals are in it, identified to species. And the chemistry written into their bones says they shared the same water, the same sediment, the same moment, long before the farm roads and the staircase down to the platform. Devil's Den matters because it turns a pretty dive into a hard data chapter about people and megafauna at the end of the Ice Age, right here in Florida. The bones from this sinkhole aren't campfire lore. They sit in museum trays with site numbers and labels. In August 2025, a federal notice listed it plainly. The Florida Museum of Natural History holds human remains from Devil's Den, Site 8LV84, at least 4 individuals, plus more than 100 associated faunal and fossil objects. That's the official inventory, not a blog post. The animals sealed with those people are the late Pleistocene cast, big grazers, predators, and a bear that no longer walks Florida. The Florida spectacled bear, Tremarctos floridanus. Several skeletons of that extinct species came from Devil's Den, which is why scientists know its bones so well. When you say Ice Age fauna, here, you can point to species lists and comparative anatomy, not guesswork. The debate was never, are there people? Or are there Ice Age animals? Both are documented. The debate was timing. Many bones from the den lost collagen, so classic radiocarbon dating struggled. In 2015, researchers ran a different test, rare earth element, RE, analysis. As bones fossilize, groundwater writes a chemical fingerprint into them. If human and animal bones show the same RE pattern, they mineralized under the same water chemistry, strong evidence they were buried and altered together. At Devil's Den, the fingerprints match, tying human remains to latest Pleistocene, Rancolabrian, fauna in the same depositional window. It doesn't give a single calendar year, but it answers the core question, contemporaneity, with lab-grade confidence. That's why the site is a keystone for the people plus megafauna story in the Southeast. It shows that Florida's karst springs weren't just watering holes. Some were archives. A roof collapse made a skylight, ledges trapped sediment, and the spring's chemistry kept a mixed community of bones intact long enough for us to read them. Add the museum custody records to the geochemistry, and the den becomes a testable case, not an anecdote. It also sharpens how we talk about the end of the Pleistocene. With the RE result, the cleanest statement isn't, maybe people arrived later, but people and the last big animals overlapped here. That pushes us to look for behavior at these springs, processing, scavenging, accidents, rather than treating every mixed deposit as a tangle of unrelated ages. When you film in that blue room and say, humans and Ice Age fauna shared this space, you've got the chemistry and the curation to back it up. Absolute dates here are still constrained, not pinpointed, but the geochemical agreement is the headline. Humans and Ice Age animals shared this Florida cavern near the end of the Pleistocene.